Is there anyone that can touch you now in the cruiserweight division in the world?
Ramírez, I'm coming for the belts.
Hey, what's up? This is Antonio. Welcome back to my channel. Now, who's ready for some fighting words? In this video, I want to do a fight breakdown for Jai Opetaia versus Gilberto Ramírez. Really quick, if you like the videos, please take the time right now, subscribe to the channel. Literally takes one click. And if you could, hit the thumbs up button because that does help as well. It helps this channel, supports this channel, and we want to see the channel grow. And lastly, circulate the videos. Tell a friend. So, with the fight breakdown, if you're unfamiliar, I just put both guys side by side. I run down a list of attributes, and whoever has more points in the end, that's the individual they're going to pick to win the fight. We're going to start this thing off with power. Jai Opetaia, 27 wins, 21 KOs, 0 losses. We have Ramírez, 47 wins, 30 KOs, and 1 loss. On paper, yeah, sure, I'm going to go with Ramírez, but in actuality, because of the way he fights, Ramírez is a grinder. He's just going to throw a gazillion punches and stay busy the entire time. He's not a one-punch knockout type of guy. If we're looking at one punch, just one punch, who has more power, who generates more power, I'm going to go with Jai Opetaia. I think he has more one-punch knockout power. I think he knows how to generate more power from one singular punch, as opposed to an accumulation over the duration of the fight with Ramírez. Let's see. Next, we have boxing IQ. Well, Ramírez is kind of the same person all the time. And I feel like I said, he's a grinder. He's a pressure guy, and he's a grinder. He's just going to be there. And Ramírez is a perfect example of a busy bee. He's a very busy guy. He's always going to be throwing that jab. He's always going to be throwing that straight to the body. He's always going to be throwing something to the body. Like, he's just a really busy guy. He's never going to allow you to take a break. While you have Jai Opetaia, he will allow you to take a break. Jai's working on things. You know, he's bouncing around, but he's also trying to figure out your movements and what's the best way for him to bounce around or move around you or maneuver with you. So when it comes to boxing IQ, I'm going to give this one actually I'm going to give it a tie. I feel like Ramírez is a very smart guy. He's not the most, analytical thinker in there, but he gets the job done, and he knows where your weak points are. While I think Jai will just pretty much target something and say, that's it. I'm going to break that, or I'm going to break through that barrier. And basically, that's it. Speed. Who's faster? Definitely Jai. Ramírez is not the fastest guy in the world. But you know what? You don't necessarily... Speed is a huge factor, depending on the opponents. Someone like Ramírez, speed isn't the biggest thing in the world because, like I said, he's a grinder. Speed could very well be nullified with somebody who fights like Ramírez, simply because it's not like he's going to give you a moment's rest anyway. It's not like he's going to give you some space to think about life anyway. He's not that type of guy. So yeah, Jai is definitely faster, but you look at Ramírez and he's not going to give you the space to move with that type of speed, to be honest with you. It's going to be a fight. And I can tell you right now, early, with these two, it's going to be a fight. I think it will mirror Jai's last fight with David Nika. The difference is you're dealing with a big, strong, tough Mexican. That's the difference. And that says a lot. You're going to have to go through fire if you think you're going to break Ramírez. Let's see. Defense. Who was the better defense? Jai Opetaia. I think he's just smarter with his hand placement. I think he's smarter at slipping shots. Ramírez is no slouch when it comes to slipping, but that's about it in terms of his defense. When you look at Jai, it's also his legs. Like I said, he can... Because of the way he fights, he can get out of dodge at any given time. You look at Ramírez, he's not going anywhere. Not to mention Ramírez has that wide base and stance. He really isn't going anywhere. He can't even rely on his reflexes because his stance is so wide. So definitely, when it comes to defense, I'm giving it to Jai Opetaia. Mental toughness. Now, you all know by now. If you don't know, you're about to find out. I typically give it to the undefeated guy. And I'm looking at Jai, you're a champion. So it isn't like, you're fighting bums at this stage. No, you're the champion and you're undefeated. Now, you can say, oh, Ramírez has just one loss and he has 47 fights. Yeah, that's 47 fights. But now there is a clear pathway, blueprint on how to beat Ramírez. That's just the truth. There's a way to beat this man. And we have to be honest about that. There's a way to beat this man. When you look at Jai Opetaia, at this stage, at this point, there is no way to beat him. Even if you break his jaw, there is no way to beat him. So mental toughness, I'm going to give it to Jai Opetaia. Not to mention, Jai Opetaia is calling out the top dogs. And he's consistent in that. It's one thing to reach the top being a belt. But it's something else to reach the top and say, no, I want the other top guys. I don't want number two. I want my equals because he also has a belt and he also has a belt. I want to unify this thing. And he's the one who's preaching for it. He's the one who's advocating for unification in his weight class. Durability. I'm going to give this a tie just on the strength that Ramírez is a Mexican. Like I said, he's tough. And he's been through some wars, and especially because of the way he fights. When you fight like Ramírez and you're you tend to find yourself up close and personal more times than not. You're going to have to be a tough camper to sustain that way of fighting. But on top of that, he's got 47 fights. Not all those were a cakewalk. Every once in a while you get a guy who's probably going to go out in the first round. But for the most part, he had to work for it. And not to mention, like I said, the way he fights forces him to be in a compromised spacing, meaning at any given time, he can get counterpunched at any given time because of where he's at. So, yeah, because he's a pressure guy. So, any given time. While you look at Jai Opetaia, his last fight with David Nika, a much bigger guy, mind you. And Jai typically is the smaller guy when he's facing these guys. So that shows your durability, that he can take the shots from these much bigger guys. But also, we've seen Jai at his lowest low with a broken jaw, and he still wins the fight. So I got to give it a tie. Range. What's the best range? Well, here's the thing about Ramírez. If I could critique or change anything, like let's just say if I was his coach for 48 hours, the one thing that I would really try to grind home with him is you're pretty tall and you have very long arms. I don't know why you are so low based and your legs are so wide open and you're so low based. If I'm if I'm his coach, I'm like, no, I'm gonna make you mimic Lennox Lewis. You're gonna stand right here. You're going to keep this thing right here, and you're just going to pop that. You're going to pop the jab anyway, but at least pop the jab where they're not in position to pop you back. That's the one thing that I would say. However, Ramírez, it's like he gets lower and lower and lower as the fight goes on. And I'm like, dude, you have those long arms. You don't even have to be in that range, and you can still inflict the same amount of damage that you are by being so close and being so low. While you look at Jai Opetaia, he can fight in both. He's been in both. His last fight was definitely up close and personal. I feel like his bread and butter is on the outside because he has that hop step. His bread and butter is on the outside because he has that lateral movement. His bread and butter is on the outside because he can fight backing up. And it's just like, but he's the type of guy, that I'm seeing, especially after this last fight. He not necessarily will go out of character, but he will go out of script. If you have a good game plan and the game plan is working, keep with it. But he's the type of guy, this is what you want to do, let's do it. Let's just go flat-footed for the rest of this fight. So there you have it. Recovery. Jai has a better recovery. Because he fought with a broken jaw, that's why. It hurts. It hurts when you have a broken jaw. You can't even close your mouth. You got to breathe like... The way your breathing is off, like everything is just not fun. And if someone lightly jabs you, that hurts as well. While you look at Ramírez, he has a loss. He has a loss. So maybe he was not beaten down or knocked out or anything like that, but clearly somebody was out punching you. So in the same sense, your mental toughness, well, if you punch back more, you will win. Or you at least make it to a draw. But you allowed somebody to knock you out, you allowed somebody to bruise you, or to the point where you can't defend yourself, or you allowed somebody to outpunch you. Now, outpunching is different because outpunching simply means you didn't punch back as much or more than the other individual. So you actually had an opportunity to win that fight and not lose that fight. Let's see. We got cardio with the tie. Ramirez can throw a lot of punches. Like, the dude can just go. When it's time to go, it's time to go. And he can definitely throw a lot of punches. You have to give it to him. While you look at Ja, he definitely has his reserves. And what he's doing in the first round, he can't do in the closing rounds. But he also has a push go button, and like, you know, somewhere in the back of his brain when it's like, all right, I got to get a guy out of here, or I got to really make a strong impression, not just on this individual in front of me, but also to those 3 judges over there. I have to make a really strong impression. I feel like Ja has that over Ramirez. I feel like he has that, and because of that, I feel like in the later rounds, he can push. So when I look at cardio, yeah, I'm gonna say a tie with that. Creativity. I think Jai Opetaia, I think he has much more creativity. Again, because he also moves with his legs. There's not a whole. See, here's the thing. When I say creativity, and maybe I'm gonna adjust that category because I don't think it's fair to both sides. Because the way Ramirez fights, it doesn't require a lot of creativity. While you look at Jai Opetaia, he does have a lot more finesse to his fight style. So I might have to adjust that in the future. So for that reason, I'm just going to give creativity a tie so we can be fair across the board. Dog, who has more dog in him? Like, just, you know what? We got 1 round to go. Bro, you got to knock this guy out. He's already knocked you down twice earlier in round 2 and round 3. You got to knock this guy out. Every time this man swings at you, regardless of not if he makes contact with you, the crowd is screaming his name off, and it's swaying the judges. You got to go out there and knock him out. Which one of these guys can get that job done? Based upon his last fight, based upon the fact that his jaw was broken, I'm going to go with Ja. I think when it's all on the line and you got to get it going, and there is no plan B, there is no tomorrow. It's now or never, or it was all a dream. I think Jai Opetaia gets it done. I'm sorry, I like Ramirez, but the fact is he has already got a loss. So somewhere mentally, he either has a button that you can switch off, or there's a place that he won't mentally pass. Only he can answer that question. Last but not least, danger. Who's more dangerous between these 2 guys? Well, I think based upon the response from the category of dog, who's got more dog in him, I'm going to say Jai Opetaia. I think he's more dangerous. And I do think one punch knockout power, I think he is more dangerous. Just to put in contrast, that is my answer, but just to put in contrast, I think as the fight goes on, Ramirez becomes more dangerous because the amount of punches, the punch output is just going to get higher and higher and higher. And the question is to Ja, can you keep up with my punch output? That's great that you have 50 punches in a round, 50 punches in a round. That's great. But I'm averaging like 80 punches in a round. So you got to ask yourself, can you keep up with my pacing? And I think as the fight goes on, if that's why I said Ja needs to keep his distance. That's why I said Ja needs to keep his composure. He doesn't need to get into a fight. This is not the individual to get into a fight with. It's just not. It's not the individual. Now, if I'm Ramirez, he should pick a fight. Based upon Ja's personality, he should pick a fight. Based upon Ja's last fight. And Ja flat out said it in the post-fight interview. He said, I didn't come here for that, but it seems like he wanted it, so let's have it. Do not do that with Ramirez. He is not David Naika. Do not do that with Ramirez. I think things will go really bad, and it would really be detrimental to stay the course with this particular opponent in this particular fight. So there you have it. That's my fight breakdown. There's going to be another one once I see these guys face to face, and I see these guys in an actual press conference. I see the actual size difference, the body language, the overall responses from both guys, and then I can give a more complete and more accurate fight breakdown. Drop your thoughts down below.